What's up, everybody? My name is Shane Kohler, and this is the Conscious Love Show. Thanks so much for joining me here, where each week I'm sharing true-to-life insights and experiences from my journey and how I've created the loving and committed partnership I have today. I answer your questions and have live discussions with you so I can support you in your specific situation. And I bring in experts and people who know their stuff so we can all learn from their perspectives. Thanks again for checking out the show. Please subscribe on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on the most. And I would love it so much if you leave a review and tell people what you think of us. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at The Living Relationship to connect more closely. And I'm grateful to be supporting you on your journey to love. So what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Conscious Love Show. Shane here, as always, very excited to be with you today, and just a pleasure and a privilege to be here and to share with you. Today we have a very special episode, and I'm excited to bring on Ishmael Gomez III, who is just a really incredible creator. He's a writer, a mentor, a film director. Someone that I've personally found on Instagram. I've been following you for quite some time now. I don't know how long it's been, but it's been a while. And, I'm always just touched by the content you share, the sincerity and the honesty and the authenticity that you bring. And, I could tell you're in a very similar line of, coaching to me in terms of coaching women and dating and their issues with men and things like that. So definitely very much in the same genre there. And I'm just always impressed by the care, the compassion, the authenticity that you bring to the work. So yeah.
Same, likewise.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So just for anyone who might want to look him up, you can find Ishmael at Save the Messenger on Instagram. And he's got some really great stuff. So if you don't already follow him, definitely check him out. And today's topic we're going to be speaking into is things men say that confuse women. And I know just from your content and what I've seen from you on social media, I know that you're going to have a lot of really amazing things to share as we do a deep dive on this topic. So excited to be with you and get your insights on it. Before we dive in, anything you'd like to say as an intro, just before we jump into the conversation?
Yeah, I'm very passionate about relationships. Like you said, I have different branches of things that I like to do. I see myself as a creator. I like mentoring people. I like always talking from the heart, things that I've seen myself, things that I've experienced. Because, a lot of times in our field, a lot of people always have that question: are you a therapist? Are you licensed? And all these things. And I feel, I'm an expert in me and the things that I've experienced. So I always speak from the heart and the things that I've been through. And if there's something that somebody close to me has been through, then sometimes I can give a perspective on that. But that's the only way that I feel confident enough to talk about, relationships and male nature and things of that sort. And also, I do my research. I like reading a lot. I've always been into self-development. And I have that phrase that I always use in all of my videos, that is, for your relationships to change, you need to change. And it's something that I realized for myself the moment that I started focusing on myself, and trying to grow as an individual. I started attracting amazing people into my life. So that's what I always try to teach.
Yeah, beautiful. I very much, am with you 100% on that, right? As we are the origin point for all of our life, right? And everything in our life comes out of who we are and how we're showing up. So very much with you on that. So I guess question I'd like to ask you around this topic as we start is, in the topic of things men say that confuse women. And I guess what I'd like to hear from you before we get into all the nitty-gritty details of it is, why do you think this is an important topic? Like what is it that you see, or what is it you experience from people that makes you feel like this is something that people need to know about?
Yeah, well, I feel that when it comes to relationships and a lot of things in life, really, the moments that I felt, let's say, sadness in my life, sometimes, you have somebody like a loved one that passes away or anything like that. But Generally, when you feel certain sadness in your life and you don't know where it's coming from, you just have one of those days that you feel down. I feel that a lot of sadness comes from lack of knowledge and
Mm.
confusion. And even when you lose somebody that you love, you can say that that's even lack of knowledge, that you don't know where they went, if there's an afterlife, right? So I always feel that confusion leads to sadness. Like when you have the lack of knowledge, when you feel helpless, then you start feeling sad because you don't know what to do, you don't know what direction to take. So a lot of things in relationship, right? When there's confusion, like what does this person mean? What do they want? That I think leads to a lot of unhappiness that a lot of people are feeling subconsciously. And the moment that they start putting all the pieces together and they understand, sometimes it's still a little bit painful, but being aware of like what are the answers, I think that brings a little bit of peace of mind to everybody.
Yeah, yeah, I agree 100% with that. I think that's very profound what you're sharing there. So, I guess around this topic, if we could start, like, what are some of the common things that you hear men say that, or you often feel women are confused by that they hear from men?
Well, I think a lot of women confuse, like there are three types of men, right? And the same thing applies to women, but we're talking to the female public here, audience. But there are people that have low interest in you, right? Almost to non-existent. There's people that have mid interest, and then there's people that have very high interest. And I think what confuses a lot of women is when they find a man that has mid interest, that he likes her, okay, but he's not really pursuing having a committed and fulfilling relationship with her. So a lot of the times they're confused, even like women that have married men that, they got married because they thought she was good enough, right? And years later, they start realizing that the relationship is not really fulfilling them in different areas of their lives. So I think a lot of the confusion that women have is when they find a man that has mid interest and suddenly, they play hot and cold and they say things like, oh no, I need some space, and they disappear for a week and they don't hear from them and then they appear again. And a lot of these actions, I think, like I said, lead to a lot of confusion and a lot of sadness in many people.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess what would, in a situation like that, right? If a woman were to encounter a man that's showing kind of this mid-level interest, maybe hot and cold, one day I'm into you, the next day I'm not. What is the like what does she need to do about that, right? Like what is her role in that, or how does she need to show up in a situation like that?
Well, listen, I something that I learned, it took me many years to learn, but something that I've, let's say, implemented in my life now that I'm 33 is I only deal with people that have high interest in me,
Mm.
right? I never try to convert a non-believer. you know, like and a lot of the times you know what that looks like, right? Every single woman has had one guy that was like drooling over her when they were in high school or maybe in their 20s, and she never really gave him attention, she never really liked him. But you have to have a sense of what a man that has very high interest in you looks like, right? And you can use, let's say, Bob as a standard, right? So whenever you meet another man, you ask yourself your question: would Bob do this? Would have Bob acted this way, right? Like in my case, I grew up around, women that were very loyal, devoted wives. And I know what true, genuine love from a woman looks like, right? Also, I've had exes in the past that had those feelings for me as well. So whenever I meet a woman that has mid interest, I don't try to raise her interest by like playing games or like not texting her for 3 days, because those things may work in the short time, like for a couple of weeks. But then you feel that you have to keep using all these techniques, all these like, push and pull, hot and cold, to keep her attracted to you because you're not showing your genuine self, who you are as a person. And so they're just attracted to this whole, theater play that you put up for them.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that's just a rule that I have for myself. I only deal with people that have high interest. Now, the thing is that unfortunately, a lot of times the people that have high interest in you you don't really care much about them, right? So it's about meeting people until you get that, that click that both of you have high interest. So
Yeah, and I think that's probably a very potent point for a lot of the listeners is what you just spoke into is like, well, I hear it all the time, right? It's like I like the people who don't like me and I don't like the people who like me.
yeah.
So, so you said it's about meeting people and continuing to meet people until you find that mutual interest. What,
Yeah,
go ahead.
because
Yeah.
sometimes I feel that, you know, this happened to me as well, but you're just not meeting enough people. You're just not meeting enough men. And you don't have to go out. I mean, you can go on dates if you want. You can go, have a coffee or whatever. But sometimes I feel like women and even men, they come from a place of scarcity, right? Like, okay, are you meeting at least one person that you like a week? Because sometimes you're not going to be. I remember when I was in college and my roommate, all of us had girlfriends, and my roommate was 23 and he didn't have a girlfriend. He was really depressed. It was like, oh, you guys have girlfriends or whatever. And I'm like, bro, you're always playing video games here. Like, you barely go out with us. Do you think she's going to come knocking on your door? Like, hey, I want to be with you. Like, it doesn't happen that way. You have to be out there meeting people and just as friends, really, just being friendly, meeting new people. Sometimes you're in a small town and you have to get out, right? Sometimes it's also your environment, or in the environment that you are, the people that you look for are not really there. I mean, I live in Miami and like, most of the women here are not really my type, but I still meet people here and there. I find communities, I make new friends, and you don't know where that's going to lead to. But I feel that a lot of the times that's what a lot of the problems arise from, that you're just not meeting enough new people and making new connections with other people.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I mean, you're laying out like a pretty simple trajectory here, right? You're laying out like you only show interest in people who show high interest in you, right? If someone has that kind of mid-level interest, just kind of disconnect, let them go. Um, and just keep dating, keep meeting, keep exploring until you find that kind of click, that kind of connection. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this stuff isn't complicated. It's not that difficult. And yet it's something that like we all, men and women both, I think, when we're single and we're dating, like it's often easier said than done. So
Mm-hmm.
what are some of the biggest pitfalls that you see prevent people, and here again we're specifically talking to a female audience, although I think a lot of men probably relate with a lot of what we're talking about too. But what are some of the biggest pitfalls you see specifically for women in dating men that they're not able to kind of stick to these rules that you're laying out, or maybe rules isn't the best word, but like these guidelines that you're laying out here, right?
Yeah, a lot of the times I think is because women go for what they feel. Oh, I like how he makes me feel,
Mm.
right? And you have to understand that the feelings are yours, they're not his, meaning they're coming from within you. So if you had emotional control and you know how to bring those feelings through some other activity, through some other things that you do in your life, you will understand like emotional mastery, where you're like, okay, it's not about how he makes me feel. It's about what he gives me, right? It's about the connection that we have. It's a two-way street. The feelings are just coming from within me. Maybe it's like trauma based. Maybe I have some attachment issues because I think a lot of women have anxious attachment styles, right? That they haven't worked through themselves. So I think those are some of the pitfalls that they just go for. They're not self aware of their emotions. They just go with, they let the feelings lead the connection instead of being really self aware. Why am I feeling this way? But for example, a lot of clients come to me, most of the clients that I get, I don't know your case, but they always come from a painful place.
Mm-hmm.
Like a man walked away, divorced, they got kids, maybe something like that. And a lot of the times they want the man back. They want the husband, the boyfriend back. So the first thing that I always do is like working on self-awareness. Okay, why do you want him back? Do you really understand why you want him back? Because if you really dive deep into yourself, you realize that what you're kind of craving is a feeling. right? Again, going back to the feeling. And if you are able to create that feeling within yourself, right? If you're able to, let's say, engage in an activity, like I said, through friendships, through family, sometimes you're doing things that you're not even passionate about. You have to look at your whole life, right, as a whole, right? And understand that maybe you're lacking certain things in your life in certain areas that you're just putting that energy on this man and he's making you feel these things. But when you fill that hole, right, then you understand that you don't really need the person. You just needed to be able to kind of like create those emotions within you, that fulfillment within you.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's something I often speak about too, is this feeling of wanting, and I think this does go both for men and women too, is like wanting someone to be the answer, and like, there is no someone out there who's the answer, right? Like you're the answer. And I think it's one of the biggest tricks that our minds play on us, is thinking that when we find this someone, special someone, whether it's our ex or someone new, whatever it is, but when we find the special someone, they're going to somehow be the answer to this emptiness we've been feeling in our lives. And just
Yeah.
recognizing like that is not true at all, right? Like the emptiness will return until you learn how to, I guess, fill it, would be the way to say it,
Yeah.
but until you learn how
Yeah.
to be with that, right?
And sometimes, listen, sometimes I'm very self-aware of my emotions, and I know sometimes I just feel down some days. And like going back to sometimes it's lack of knowledge. I'm going through something in my life or I'm stressed out. Sometimes you also have to understand that the emptiness returns,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you just welcome it and you just say, oh, it's one of those days that I'm feeling, a little bit down. I'm not feeling too motivated. That's okay. It's going to pass. It may last 2, 3 days, but you become self-aware that you're in that, phase right now and that it just goes away. A lot of times you're in a relationship and you start pressuring your partner because you're feeling these feelings and you start picking on them, the things that they're doing, like blaming them for everything that's going wrong in your life. And also a lot of the times, it also comes about something that people really struggle with is accountability, like being accountable for the things that you do. Like I've been one of the most difficult things that you have to face sometimes in a relationship is, let's say, when somebody walks away and you look at yourself in the mirror. Like I've been through that experience, and what the person did, let's say at the moment, I thought it was dishonest and it was hurtful, but I also was accountable and looked at myself in the mirror and thought, to be honest, I'm so weak right now. I'm so um let's say desperate for attention and for love that I understand why I pushed this person away. And looking at myself right now, I don't even feel proud of myself,
Mm.
And I feel that a lot of the times, all these like terms like narcissist and like, toxic, all these things get overused and get thrown around so easily, and people don't hold themselves accountable, of like being, like I stopped making this woman feel safe by my side, and I understand that now because I did this and that, and how can I improve myself? No matter what happens in a relationship, even when, let's say, you get cheated on, right? Like I remember the first time I got cheated on at 21, I was like cursing, in my house. I was so pissed, like punching the wall and angry, right? And I was just like thinking this was the worst human being that ever existed on planet Earth. But then, as you grow older, you start realizing there's always you always have a responsibility in every relationship. And you look back and say, you know what? I actually saw the red flags, but I was so codependent on her and the attention that she was giving me. And I loved being around a beautiful woman that I could show off. And I was getting validation wherever I went from my friends and the groups. So you also always become accountable in your relationships, and you look at yourself, the things that you can control. And hopefully you become more self-aware so you don't make those mistakes in the future.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, it's really powerful what you're saying, and I think it does, like, it's a place that a lot of people don't want to go, right? Like a lot of people don't want to really look at the things that are not working for them. It's so much easier to say, oh, well, they were just a narcissist, or they were just toxic, or they just, did this. And those things may even be true to a degree, right? But even within that, there's the accountability of, okay, if they're a narcissist and they're toxic, why'd you choose them? Why are you chasing
Yeah.
them around all over town, right? If that, and so
Mhm.
there's always a way of being accountable in that. And I think it's just, that is where you find your power, right? Like there's no way to find your power without that. You'll always be a victim, and you'll always be helpless if you don't make that leap, right? To really look at how you're participating with all of this.
Yeah, always. I think there's so much strength in that, you know?
Yeah. And so you touched on things like in your experience, I love being with this beautiful woman and being able to show her around and all the validation I was getting. And I was codependent, and I was, I needed that person's attention. And so I was overlooking the red flags. What do you think are, if you could kind of expand on that and give some more examples, like what do you think are the kinds of things that we could be accountable for, but we don't see, right? Like what are the things that people might not be seeing in themselves in your experience?
Well, I think sometimes people don't like to accept the way things are. Let's say like biology, right? Like most men are attracted to younger women, and that's just a fact, right? If you want to fight that fact, you're gonna just waste a lot of time and energy, right? Trying to fight that fact. Like most women like a man that is strong, capable, and experienced. That's just how it is. When I was 16, when I was 15, I would see, older girls that I liked being with older guys that were 22, 23, that had the bike, the motorcycle, and they were picking them up and all those things. And I was really upset. Now later when I was at 29, when I'm 33, then I'm dating the ones that are 25, 26. And I know that the guys that are that age are actually probably upset that I'm dating those women. But those are just the way things are and the way the biology works. And I think that a lot of times people don't like to accept those things, and they just become really upset. And now they are obviously people that, let's say that most men like dating younger women, but that doesn't mean that a man, if you're in a relationship with a woman, he's gonna be disloyal. He's going to cheat on you with a younger woman, which happens a lot of the times. But that's when you need to become a better selector, right? Because you have to understand that if you really want a special relationship, you're gonna have to meet someone special who's not average in all those boxes that we were talking about. And at the same time, you need to become special to be able to attract this special person. Because a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the times it's like, when I always think about, let's say I'm not married, I'm single, I'm 33, but I think about my future wife, and I think the type of woman that I want, right? A lot of the times when I was younger, I thought I deserve this woman. This is what I want. I deserve her, right? And it comes to a point where you realize, well, actually, if this is the woman that I want, what type of man do I need to become to be able to attract this woman,
Mm-hmm.
right? And maybe I need to be well spoken. Maybe I need to be successful. And these are things that it's not like, okay, she's going to be a gold digger and all this and that. This is just like, it's going to be like so undeniable, right? That I'm just going to become such a special specimen, let's say, right? What I do, and I'm gonna be so fulfilled. And it doesn't mean that I need to drive a Ferrari or a Bugatti or none of these things that people talk online. But I'm gonna be so proud of myself, so proud of the things that I built, that I know I'm going to be able to attract the woman that I want. And I feel that a lot of the times is that thing that we just think, oh no, I deserve this person, I deserve this and that, and you have all these boxes that you're ticking, and then you don't focus on yourself because you attract what you are, not what you want,
Mm-hmm.
right? And a lot of the times you say, well, but Ismael, I'm a kind woman, I have a good heart, I'm beautiful. And I'm like, yeah, but do you think you're wise enough? Maybe you need more wisdom so you can select better partners. maybe you need more patience so you can wait for the right person and you don't waste time. So sometimes it's not that, yeah, you can be beautiful, you can have an amazing heart, but it's other things in you that are still lacking. And if you focus on them, just minor things like patience and self-awareness, you'll be able to attract the person that you really want. So I think that's what I see a lot of the times, that I've seen in myself and I see in other people.
Yeah. You know, you just touched on a lot of really awesome stuff there. And I've just been kind of making some notes because I want to kind of go one by one with everything you just said. Because I mean, so many potent points you just brought up. And I guess I want to jump back to what you were saying about you know, older men, or not older men, but how men in general tend to be attracted to younger women. And I mean, a lot of our listenership, you know, we 90% is going to be women, and likely ages maybe 35 to 45, 55, you know. So we might have a lot of women who are listening to this conversation that are going, you know, am I too old? Or you know, is a man gonna want someone at my age? And so there is a certain objective reality, right? In that, like you said, you know, women largely want that strong, capable guy, or for example, women largely like taller men, right? Like these are objective kind of facts that apply to many, many people. And you could say the same thing about, you know, how men like younger women. That could be something that is true, generally speaking, and applies to many, many people. So what would a woman want to do in facing that fact? Let's say maybe she's 35 or 45 or 55, looking for a partner, struggling with this idea that is somebody going to always want someone younger than me, right? Like what would someone in that position need to do, or how would she need to see the situation? Like, I guess what I'm asking is, like, how would you coach someone in that position?
Well, the first thing that I would say is, you know, I think appearance is important. It's more important in women than men. And again, this is a fact that, you know, a lot of the times you just have to be self-aware. You know, it's like taller men, that's the thing, you know, like being above 6 feet, you have more options, let's say as a man. More women will be more attracted to you because, you know, you look, you can protect her better, right? So all these biological triggers that they have, that they think, oh, that this man is capable. And sometimes you meet a man who's like 6'4", and after you speak to him for a month, you realize that he's not capable at all, right? Maybe other women are attracted to, you know, intelligence and things of that sort. But you have to understand that as a woman, appearance is important. But now the problem is that you fall into this rabbit hole of trying to compete with younger women, right? Which is what I see a lot of older women do, like Botox and surgery, and like you spend so much money, time, and energy, and it's a race that you'll never win, right? So you want to look your best, but you don't want to be competing with other women. You always want to do the best that you can for yourself. And also, a lot of the times, I find, for example, women that are unhappy with a physical attribute, like they don't like their nose or they don't like their ears. And I always tell them that whenever this happens, is because you're comparing yourself to someone else, right? Because if you were the only person on the planet, right, how did you know you had a big nose? You wouldn't
Mhm.
know because you don't have nobody to compare. You would think that your nose is perfect, right? So I think competing, trying to race this you know, this race of trying to like look younger and spending so much money and doing all these things where at the end of the day you look recognizable, that's not something that I advise. I think you should look your best, but then you should look for men that are not attractive or are not looking for younger women. They're looking for women your age, right? Like I can tell you at 33, I'm definitely looking for women, different women that I was looking when I was 22,
Mhm.
right? Like now, you know, I no matter how attractive a woman is, like the moment that I can have a conversation with her, the moment that I see she likes waking up at 1 p.m., she doesn't like cooking, she doesn't like really, she doesn't know how to take care of a man, she doesn't really care, she's on her phone all the time, right? I'm looking for different things. When I was 24, I didn't care much about these things. There's some men that are 40 and they don't care about these things. They're like, oh, she can do whatever I want. You know, as long as I have a 22-year-old next to me, I don't really mind. So it's about becoming conscious of all these things and then becoming a better selector, looking for men that actually want to have a mature woman. I've dated older women and I can tell the difference when you date, a real woman that knows how to take care of a man and she's not just, let's say, over jealous or creating drama and conflict, right? Or I think a woman with more experience can bring a lot of peace into your life. And so, yeah, I think it's about becoming a better selector and finding the men that are looking for what you have to offer.
Yeah. And I'd love to just dig a little deeper on that because I love what you're saying. And there's like your example that you gave, when I was 24, I was looking for a certain, like it didn't really matter as long as she was hot and she, had these kinds of, attributes, whatever that was. Like now
Mm-hmm.
these days, I need a little more than that. Right. So I guess I'd like you to shed some light on what is it that, the men out there who are not just looking for the, hot 25-year-old, like what are those men actually looking for? What are the things that are going to attract a man like that?
Well, I think, um, for example, I think a woman with strong boundaries is a very attractive thing. Now, women confuse this with being, when you hear that phrase, oh, he needs to be able to handle me. And like, what? Like, being a man, I mean, yourself, like, it's such a, like, we deal with so much, there's so much competition for men, right? Like, I mean, whenever I go out there, like, I know I'm competing against other men, and this is the reality. And a lot of women don't understand how much rejection men go through, right? Like I go out there, I know the woman that I want, another 1 million men want her as well, right? And they're willing to do whatever they want to take her away from me. I go out there, I'm competing against other men for business, right? Other men want to take my business away, they want to take my clients, right? And I think there's enough for everybody, but it's tough to be a man. I mean, there's a pandemic of like young men just feeling lonely, right? So I think you as a woman being somebody that has strong boundaries, right? That you're really supportive, you're a great listener. I think being a great listener is a skill that um, many women have, right? And I think that makes you so attractive as a woman when you know how to give great feedback, you know how to have a conversation, you remember things that I told you 3 days ago about a business or something, you give ideas, and also you know how to say no, right? Like talking about strong boundaries, that I say, hey, I feel that I want to come today, see you today, because a lot of times, men, we're busy and then we just want to fit a woman in our schedule. Hey, I'm free Tuesday, 9 p.m. And then you just change your whole life for this man. You cancel everything to see him at 9 p.m. instead of being like, hey, 9 p.m. I'm busy too. Like on Tuesday, can we just Thursday works for me? And it's not doing it intentionally, which a lot of women do. They start playing all these games. I'm gonna seem busy, so he doesn't. It's actually trying to give as much as you receive and like establishing the strong boundaries. If you see that a man is liking other women's pictures on social media, half naked, and you don't like this, right? Instead of hiding it and like hiring me to tell you what to do, if you're not okay with it, just tell them. Have those strong boundaries, like, hey, this is not, I don't accept this. And you have to be, I think, one of the sexiest, one of the qualities that can make you the most attractive. This is for men and for women, for anybody, is that you have to be willing to walk away at any time. Doesn't matter if you have kids, doesn't matter if you've been married for 40 years. That sense of respect for the other person only comes when they know that you're willing to walk away. If you're being disrespected, if they cross your boundaries in a very hurtful way, right? And that's the way that I think you as a woman, you need to gain a man's respect, just as a man needs to gain a woman's respect, right? And I think those are the things, some of the minor things that I think that helps a lot, for women, like strong boundaries, being willing to walk away, being a great listener, and also, this is such a cliche advice that, all of us have heard it, but it's so true. And I think the older I get, I understand that it's just be yourself. Just be yourself, right? Like I get messages, people hire me like, oh, I was being too. I remember this girl told me once, oh, he walked away because I was too nerdy. Like men don't like nerdy women. And I was like, what? Those are my favorite type of women. I love nerdy women. Like, where can I find one in Miami right now? Right. So it's about like not accepting yourself a lot of the times and just being okay with who you are, being okay in your skin, being this is who I am. Do you love me for who I am? I'm not going to pretend to be someone else. I'm not going to pretend, like I'm this, like even myself when I was dating when I was younger, a lot of times I would start pretending that I didn't care. The whole matching their energy. Like, okay, if you're giving me 50%, I'm gonna give you 50%. And then I hope that you increase to 70%. Like, I don't do that stuff anymore, right? Like, it's just a waste of time. Wherever I go, I give 100%. If I feel that you can't reciprocate that, then we shouldn't be together. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, you touch on something so powerful there because I think so many people are afraid to give that 100% and have that person only return 50%. And then it's like, what's wrong with me? I gave them 100% and they only gave me 50. I guess I'm a fucking loser, you know?
Yeah.
And it's
Okay.
like people are like unwilling to experience that. And yet, if you're not willing to experience that, you're not even showing up in a way where you could actually have a real relationship unfold, right? So like part of part of creating that relationship that you're looking for is being having the willingness to put yourself in the position to experience that exact thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of the times it's people are just not kind to themselves, or you're watching things that, for example, I'll give you an example. Like, I don't like drinking. I'm not much of a drinker. Sometimes, occasionally, at a party or a celebration or something. When I was in my 20s, I would always struggle with this with women, because I would go out on a dates and they will get a drink. And, I'm a man, I'm supposed to be drinking whiskey and like, yeah, I drink and this and that, right? So I wouldn't accept that. I would start coming up with excuses and I would buy a drink that I didn't want to consume, where it gets to the point that you understand, like, yeah, listen, this is who I am. I don't like drinking. I'm into biohacking. Actually, later when we go dancing, if you go with a guy that drinks, he's gonna last for 20 minutes. I can be dancing until 3 a.m. And then when I take you home, all the stuff is gonna happen where you're gonna see the levels of energy that I have. So you embrace who you are as a person. You're like, yeah, I don't like, instead of hiding it and coming up with excuses, you just embrace it, right? Like you don't try to hide yourself and you don't try to hide these things. You completely expose yourself and who you are. And if they don't like it, then you find someone who likes it because there's always somebody that is going to admire those qualities in you. I promise you that.
Yeah. And, I think that is like the biggest fear, right? Is it's almost easier to pretend to be someone else because if they don't like you, well, at least they didn't see who you really are. Right.
Yeah.
But when you really show up as who you really are, and then they don't like you, it's like that's the stuff that people don't want to feel. So, like, what would you say to someone about that? Like, if they're like if they show up as themselves and that person doesn't like what they see, like what does somebody do with that?
Well, you have to, I always use the analogy, you have to think of yourself as a flavor. Let's say that you're chocolate, right? You have to understand that some people don't like chocolate. Now,
Mhm.
is there something wrong with the chocolate ice cream? No, there's a lot of people who consume it and they like it, but the fact that they don't like the chocolate ice cream, or maybe they like it, but they prefer strawberry. So when they're with you, they're okay, they like you, talking about the mid interest, but then
Yeah.
they find the strawberry flavor and they go away. And you think, oh, there's something wrong with me. Is no, they always prefer the strawberry. They were just with you because they also enjoy the chocolate. But once they found the strawberry, they went away. So I think, again, being self aware of like, okay, I'm going to show up as who I am. But at the same time, also going back to the being accountable, being responsible, like I know that, I'm really fit. I'm into, athletics and working on and all these things. I know now that I'm 160 pounds, I probably attract more women than I was when I was 125. Like this is just, a fact. So I also have to be responsible. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna work out a little bit. I'm gonna become more fit because I know this is going to help me in my, attraction levels. So it's about self-acceptance and at the same time self-improvement, but never punishing yourself because you think that there's something wrong with you. It's
Right.
always that you have to meet people that like who you are. But again, if you don't show who you are, actually, sometimes you end up pushing people away.
Hmm.
Like if you are, sometimes when you are with the wrong woman, for example, you as a man, you will feel like, oh, I'm being a simp, I'm being needy, you know? And then you meet a woman who loves that kind of stuff, who loves a man who's like romantic and is always like sharing, cherishing her and like taking her out and like giving her gifts and doing all these things. And now you're playing the cold, cool type of guy, right? And she completely loses interest because she's not attracted to those things. So you stopped being yourself. And what that did was actually pushing away the woman that could have been attracted to your personality.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm with you on that. And it's so true. Just the willingness to accept yourself and as you are and, to love and appreciate yourself as you are. And then I think kind of, like you said, be out there, be meeting people, be engaging and patiently waiting for that person who will love you in that same way. Right.
Yeah.
And if you're chocolate and they like strawberry, like accepting that it's okay for people to like strawberry. Like not everybody needs to like chocolate, and that's okay too, right? Like it's okay for people to have what they like, and you can allow them without taking that personally.
Yeah. And sometimes you can also, going back to the flavor, you can be such a specific individual that you might be that chocolate mint flavor that a lot of people are not really into it. But when you find someone who's really into chocolate mint, I mean, the experience that they have with that flavor, it's amazing. It's probably even more amazing than someone who likes just one of the regular flavors, right? So again, going back to that, it's about improving, but at the same time, accepting and finding people who are attracted to who you are and are in alignment with who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that about the mint chocolate because it's so funny. Like it's so true because people freak out about mint chocolate ice cream. They really do, but it's only like a certain amount of people, right? But it is.
Yeah.
It's like you be that very special flavor that speaks to that very specific person. And and in my experiences, I think when we're really ourselves, all of us are a very unique flavor, right? Like there's like none
Yeah.
of us are these general flavors. That's only something that happens when we try to like blend in and be something else. But we're all that very unique flavor, and it is that uniqueness that attracts that right person, right?
Yeah. And like sometimes even, look, even you and I, maybe we make some videos that are so similar, right? But still, the way that you deliver the message, the way that I deliver the message, the pauses, the tones, the way that we look, like everything just makes it different.
Mm-hmm.
And some people will be attracted to you, some people will be attracted to my content. And a lot of the times I feel people just don't want to, like, even when creating content, they just don't want to repeat what other people are saying. And it's like everything at the end of the day, everything is just so basic, really. The message is basic. Be yourself, accept yourself, attract people that have high interest. There's just a million ways to say it. And sometimes it's also that I actually repeat a lot of the same messages. Like once every 2 months, I even make the same video because when that happens, that I saw so many videos about heartbreak, or somebody was watching and I didn't pay attention. I was like, oh yeah, that's cool. Oh, the secure attachment. Oh yeah, whatever. It wasn't to the point, the moment in my life when I was there in pain, that video became useful. And now
Mm-hmm.
I consumed it again and from a different perspective. And now it was useful to me. So
Yeah.
sometimes I myself, I don't find, tiring, or I don't find, a waste of time repeating the same message over and over, because I know maybe today someone will watch it that really needs to hear it. And maybe they heard it 2 months ago, but now they're ready to really listen to this message. It's going to help them.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the times it's the same thing in dating and relationships. You're putting yourself out there, you're being yourself all the time, and you're being rejected. People are ghosting you. People are doing, all these behaviors. But you got to keep showing up until the day that somebody comes along, and they're like, "Oh, wow, you're so amazing. Like, can we go on a second date? Oh, can I go meet your family?" So yeah, it's about, perseverance and patience a lot of the times.
Yeah. I want to jump back to what you said about boundaries earlier, because it really stuck out to me. The question I asked is, like what is really a man going to be attracted to, right? And you first answer you said was boundaries, which is so interesting because I think so many people are afraid to really have strong boundaries. And the fear is, if I don't give someone what they want, if I'm not available for them, if I don't sleep with them, or if I don't, do whatever they want me to do and be whoever they want me to be, they're not going to like me. And
Hmm.
so it's so interesting to hear, like, first thing out of your mouth is boundaries are super attractive, right? Telling someone no is super attractive. And so, like, shed some light on that. How is giving someone what they don't want attractive?
Well, people don't like easy things, or they don't value easy things as much, right? So talking, for example, about sleeping with men, right? Or anything. Actually, I was born in Cuba. I was raised in a communist country where everything was given for free, education, medicine. And I know what happens when things are given for free. People don't appreciate it as much. They just take things for granted. They didn't take care of the hospitals. They didn't take care of the schools, right? So the same thing applies to relationships. I feel that having strong boundaries is like, you need to gain my attention, you need to gain my respect. I'm going to give you my attention and my respect, but you also need to earn mine. And, being those things of making the man wait, right? To sleep with him, right? Because how do you know he's really into you? And a lot of the times people use that analogy of like, oh, if you want a car, don't you want to test drive it first? you know? And I always say, well, if I put a Toyota in front of you and a Ferrari, do you really need to test the car? Or you know where you're going to pick,
Yeah,
right?
I
You don't
love
need to
that.
test it.
Yeah.
So I think having strong boundaries, like, just for a matter of self-respect and a matter of, they need to earn your attention. They need to earn your respect the same way that you give it, right? And it's a two-way street, as I would say. And I find it very attractive. And I think also for women towards men, like men that have very strong boundaries, women find very attractive. Men that, put them in their place, like they say, and things like that. But I think when you have those things, it's kind of like, imagine you have a bubble around you, right? And the stronger the bubble is, the more someone wants to go inside the bubble, and the more someone appreciates your bubble, right? Because you have to think of boundaries as this thing that blocks
Mm.
anybody from entering your energy. And so, yeah, I think talking about boundaries, that's, I give all these visual things because of people love kind of like analogies and seeing things visually. I'm also even like trying to do cartoons, trying to do some animation, because I think when people see things visually, it helps them a lot to understand these things. But yeah, and it's also about, when respect is very linked to acceptance, right? Because the things that you respect are things that you accept, let's say, right? So when you see that somebody is so grounded in who they are, in their beliefs and values, right? That they say, listen, I don't think if you're in a relationship, you should be going out to clubs out there with your friends partying. I don't like that. And they might think you're being controlling. They might be saying, that you're being let's say a sexist, and you're trying to manipulate them and tell them what to do. But if you say, these are my beliefs, these are my values, and at the same time, you mirror what you're asking for, right? Because a lot of the times people say, I want this and that, but they don't give it. You live by example. Like, this is how I live. This is what I believe in. So I'm giving you what I'm asking for, right? I think that people find very attractive. And if you find somebody who matches your values and beliefs, I mean, it's like heaven right there, right? So,
Yeah, yeah. That's awesome. And I love the analogy about the bubble. It's such a great image just to think about, like, there's this bubble around me, and like the bubble is sacred, right? And if you want to be inside of the bubble, like you've got to show your worthiness. Like I'm not gonna let you inside the bubble just to try to get you to like me. Like, the bubble is sacred space, and like you've got to fit inside of it if you want to come inside. So before I give you the opportunity to step inside of this bubble, like, you're going to need to show up for me as someone that I see deserves to be here. And
yeah,
I think people do have that so backwards. It's like, no, I'm gonna let you inside. I'm gonna let you have all of it, and hopefully you'll like what you get.
yeah.
Rather than, no, I already know how amazing everything inside this bubble is, right? And I need to make sure you get it before you get in here. You know?
Yeah. And sometimes it's also like things take time. If you want something special, it's going to take time to develop that deep intimacy between two people, and I, I've changed my mind a lot about like casual sex, even as a man. Like, I mean, I'm practicing celibacy right now for the past 5 months. And it's such a rare, difficult thing to do and to tell other people as a man. Because, I realized that a lot of the times I was like sleeping around, in my 20s, and I felt certain emptiness and I didn't know where it was coming from. I was having all this short-lived connections with people. And it wasn't until I experienced deep intimacy with somebody that I realized what it's like to really want to build a whole new world, like Aladdin, a whole new world with someone, and trying to, build a family, build a future. And then once I experienced that, I went back to being single, and I went back to sleeping around and being with women, trying to get over the heartbreak. And I was reminded of kind of like going back to being yourself, because I, for example, have men in my family that they can sleep, they sleep around like they don't really care. I have friends that they can just do these things. And I always felt that me as a man, why am I not able to just do the same? If I'm a man, there's an attractive woman, she wants to sleep with me. Why am I not able to just sleep with her, and then that's it, be gone the next day or whatever. And like, I don't care about that person. And it's about that self-awareness that I realized, what, like, I'm not like that. I actually wanna, I think, sex is such a beautiful thing. And the more you get to know somebody and the more you develop that intimacy with someone, it's so much more enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
That this whole thing, that it's almost like such a short-lived, superficial experience, right? And I understood, what, I'm actually not being myself by doing these things. So I would rather, you know, be single, practice celibacy, and wait for the right woman to have build this deep intimacy, which I've experienced in the past, than continuing to have all the superficial, encounters that don't really lead to anything.
Yeah. I love that you're sharing this right now. And this is, I've personally experienced, sharing similar ideas. And having people like rage over it, because I mean, this is a touchy subject for some people. And I think, people have a lot of shame around this. And especially, we're having a conversation like this right now. And then maybe someone who hears this who maybe has slept around a lot, especially as a woman. And I don't have any value judgment against that, but culturally, there is a value judgment against that, right? And so I think there's just so much shame and defensiveness, and people, really this can be a touchy subject. But I had a similar thought the other day, actually. Um, and I thought to myself, like, if I were ever single again, and, I'm married and I plan to be married for the rest of my life, but if I ever found myself single again, I said that, I would definitely make someone wait to sleep with them. Like, not even a question in my mind. Like, if I started dating someone and, first date or second date, they wanted to go there, I would absolutely be like, I'm just not ready for that yet. And like, if you want to be with me, like, we're going to need to wait a little while. And the reason I came to that conclusion is because I'm like, knowing like what I experienced with my wife, and God forbid something were to happen there, and to go from the kind of relationship we have to like some kind of shallow hook up. I mean, it would just be soul crushing. Like it would be awful. It would be horrible, and I think it is. Like, I look at myself when I was single, and very much like similar to what you're saying is I grew up with my father, who was like basically pushed me to like have sex any opportunity I had, no matter who it was with, no matter what the condition was. It's like, just get laid as much as you possibly can. And that's the programming I received as a child. And then so that is, when I was single, that's basically how I showed up. I think I got a little more conscious as I got older, but to a large degree, that's kind of how I showed up. And for someone who hasn't necessarily experienced that depth or that intimacy, or had it be in a very real way, it's very easy to be like, what, it's just sex, what's the big deal, just enjoy it. But there is something I think sacred about it, and something related to value. When you value yourself enough to, I guess, I don't even love the word withhold, but to have a strong bound, like, I don't think it's about withholding, like I'm going to hold this back from you, and but it's more like I have a boundary that I'm not willing to cross until I really feel safe and honored and respected. Right? And when somebody feels that from you, it does call forth their respect, right? They're like, wow, that is respectable.
So, and listen, I mean, this may sound a little nihilist, but when you really think about, there's no really meaning in anything. We're just born and then we die, right? But you have to find meaning in things, and rituals, right? Like, that's what really makes life enjoyable, I feel, right? When you make something special. So something like sex, when you make it a very valuable experience to have, that it's just not something that you just go for, if you're a man or a woman, right? You just make it something special, a special occasion, almost as if it was a ritual, right? And you make it this whole, journey of meeting somebody, getting to that place where you feel, comfortable, sleeping together and all that, getting to know the person at a deeper level before you get there. I think all those things is kind of like what we, a lot of in the modern society we're losing. And a lot of it is because of the abundance of choice. I mean, this happens, I'm a film director too, and this happens in, for example, movies. When you had those rituals that you would go to like Blockbuster, and like there were all the VHS, cassettes, and you would like go down the aisle and watch the posters and pick the movie that just came out. It was such an experience, right? Now you go on Netflix, you click, there's like a million movies, you don't know which one to pick, what just came out, all this posters there, and it loses its value, right? And I think making you yourself valuing those things, giving it a special meaning, will make it more enjoyable. A lot of things, that not only sleeping with women, even kissing, something like a kiss that seems so, simple, right? even making that special, right? There's something that you can talk about, that first kiss, where it happened, it was raining, we were running to the car, and suddenly in the car we kissed, right? Trying to give value and meaning to those things and making it something special, I think will make life more enjoyable, and will make for great stories that you can tell later on.
Yeah, yeah. I'm with you 100% on that. And something that just came up for me as you were speaking is like you holding it with that value causes the other person to see it as valuable, right? It's like you actually create that in when you hold it that way, you create that in the relationship. And when you have it like it's a casual thing with very little meaning and you allow it to be like that for yourself, that's what you're going to communicate in the relationship. And that's how the other person is going to receive it, right? Oh, this is just a
Yeah,
casual thing with no meaning.
yeah, yeah.
And
And you're going to attract people that think the same,
yeah.
or that don't care about you, right? A lot of the times you're doing things that are attracting the wrong people,
Mhm.
right? Like I used to think, when I was in college, I was like, why am I attracting women that are cheaters, disloyal, and they're ghosting me? They're bad communicators. Why is this happening? Well, guess what? I was looking for them at Blue Martini, at clubs that were close to my school. Do you think I was going to find, a high quality partner in those places? Probably not. Right. I like the first girlfriend that I found. Guess what she was? She was in a library on a Sunday, doing homework. So it's also a lot of the times you put yourself in the environment and you do things that are actually attracting the wrong person.
Yeah. Yeah. So actually, and that leads very well into what I wanted to ask you next. I wanted to go back to what you were saying earlier. You said like, if you want to have a relationship that's really special, really high quality, really high caliber, you've got to be someone who's really that as well. Right. And so, your example of like, instead of looking in the clubs, I looked in the library. Right. And it's like I started showing up in different places, and that was giving me the opportunity to meet different kinds of people. So, like, what would you say if somebody wanted to become that special person or that really high caliber, high quality person? What are the kinds of things that person would do distinct from what maybe most people are out there doing?
Well, you know, you have to really understand your values and beliefs. And again, going back to, you have to be who you are, understand who you are. Like I'm saying now, like I know that me practicing celibacy, me not trying to kiss a woman on the first date, it's probably going to attract a different type of woman. Like I remember like 4 months ago, I went out with this Argentinian girl, and like she didn't even let me kiss her in like the first 3 dates. And I found that so attractive. I was like, oh wow, I usually just kiss on the first date, but this girl is really, making me wait. And then we started talking, and then at the end we saw that we had different life goals that we wanted to have and all that. So, but I think, understanding your own values and beliefs, and maybe listen, maybe you don't think it's a big deal sleeping around. Maybe you like that. If you're okay with that, then you go and you be yourself. And you go. I strongly believe that the less value and meaning you give to something is the less you're going to enjoy it, and the less you're going to find those kind of like special moments that you can share with someone. But I think you need to understand your values and beliefs. And if you want something like, I like somebody who's fit, they're probably going to be at the gym, right? So, but you have to be working out yourself. It's not like, oh, I want someone who's fit, but I've never been to the gym. Like how you have to be there at the gym working out. I like someone who reads. Well, you better be at Starbucks or like Barnes and Nobles, reading some books, looking for somebody there, or like going to the library. You have to, again, embrace the things that you're looking for in someone else. Become that first, and then you will attract it. And at the same time, you also have to kind of not be looking for it so much.
Hmm.
right? Because a lot of times we're like, oh, I want to find someone. I want to find someone. I'm going to go to the library and I'm going to go here and I'm going to go that. And you're not actually doing the things that are supposed to be attracting that person. You're not sitting down in the library and actually reading a book. Because let's say you go into the library and you never read anything. And now you meet someone that you really like. And then they tell you, something about like Shakespeare and Hamlet. And you're like, oh no, I don't really read, or I haven't read that one, and then it's like maybe the connection is not there. They see that you don't really read, right? So you have to really become that. Do it for real. If you go into the gym, you're actually working out there 2, 3 times a week. So when you meet the person, it's actually you do those things, right? Because I think a lot of times, we just try to fake it in a way. We go, it's kind of like when you're, like let's say you don't text someone back for 24 hours because you feel, that if you don't text them back, you look like you're busy and that creates more value, which in a way is true. But then you're there sitting in your room, anxious, waiting. Okay, well, I gotta wait 24 hours. It's 8 p.m. I gotta wait until tomorrow, 9 a.m. You wake up at 8:30 a.m. You're looking, okay, I still 30 minutes. Let me wait. You're doing all this thing, all this anxiety. If you actually build a life, okay, that actually you're so busy doing so many things that actually you prefer to speak. Like I remember, a lot of women would find this so attractive in me. They would tell me, they would get a little bit pissed off, but later they would tell me that I don't like texting throughout the day too much. Maybe a couple of texts, but I like only talking at nights once I'm completely free, because I like having complete focus, going back to boundaries. Listen, I'm super busy all day. I like being, deep focus on my work. Maybe we can text when I'm in lunch or whatever, but I really like talking at night, 9, 10 p.m. Right. But I wasn't pretending to do these things. I was actually, my life is built in that way that when the nighttime comes and we get on the phone, they're so excited to speak to you because you finally, got the chance and now we can really sit down and speak or FaceTime or whatever. So I think a lot of the times, again, going back to that, is like really fully become that person that you want to attract. Look for the qualities that you want in someone and become that first. And that will attract somebody who mirrors those things in you.
And I totally hear you on that. And I hear in the back of my mind the question of, well, shouldn't someone love me for who I am? Why do I have to change myself to find somebody? So can you clarify the nuance there, right? Like, what's the difference between becoming what you want to attract and changing yourself to attract someone?
Well, again, going back to self-awareness, right? There's self-awareness, there's self-acceptance, and then there's accountability. You have to understand the basics, of like human relationships and dynamics, and you have to understand attraction. Like I said, I understand that at 160, I'm going to be more attractive than at 120, being fit and right and being athletic. That's just a fact. So I still accept myself when I was at 125, but you always need to be, kind of growing. You need to feel a certain progression in your life, right? Where you don't feel stagnant, where you don't feel like nothing is really changing. I'm not growing as a person. I'm not growing as an individual, right? So it's a matter, the difference is that you don't say, oh, I need to be 160. If not, nobody's going to love me. It's like you accept, okay, I'm 125. I want to be 160. I'm working towards that. And in the way there, I will meet other people, but I'm always working on becoming my full potential.
Yeah.
While accepting where I am in the journey, So it's always that. It's the same thing that when people believe, oh, I'm not going to attract the woman I want until I have the Ferrari and I have the $1 million mansion, right? So they just work so hard to try to accomplish those things. And then when they get there, they end up attracting the wrong woman that later divorces them and takes half of the money, right? So, it's always understanding self-acceptance where you are in the journey, but at the same time, okay, I want to keep growing as an individual, and I have these life goals that I want to meet, right?
Yeah. And I think that's so powerful because I think it is something people do is they use the statement that this is just who I am as an excuse to excuse their lack of growth,
Yeah,
right? And it's like, okay, no, you are not the stagnant thing that never changes, right? You are
yeah,
always changing anyway, but the question is, what are you changing into? Are you changing into something that's really aligned with the highest possibility of who you could be, or are you changing into a kind of different version of the same thing day after day, right?
yeah.
So
Yeah. And listen, going back to, there's a lot of like toxic masculinity, toxic masculine advice going on. And there's certain truth to it. I think it's always like people just go to the extremes, for the clicks and all this stuff. There's a lot of truth to a lot of the things that in this, masculine space is being told. Like money definitely helps. I mean, I've been, again, like going back to when a woman is in love with you, really, bro. I mean, I've had women sleep on an air mattress with me in a trailer park. Like it doesn't really matter when they're really in love with you, but money does help. Money does help to be able to spend more time with your family, to spend more time with her, to go on vacation, right? Because the biggest issues that I always saw, that I've always seen in my whole life in relationships, is always either, loyalty, some type of cheating going on, or finances. It's always the major issues that I find in couples, right? Growing up, myself, seeing my clients, that's the main thing. So, me as a man, I understood, you know, after my last relationship, okay, shouldn't I take care of my finances first? And when this relationship ended, it was like 3 years ago. I was like going through two lawsuits and other two of my businesses. I mean, I had a loan because I just bought a house with my uncle, and I had so much debt. And I understood, you know what? I think I need to take care of my finances first before I even date, before I get into a new relationship, because I can't be thinking about, you can't be thinking about spending time with your partner when there's literally a lion chasing you, trying to eat you, right? First, you got to like outrun the lion or tame the lion. And then you're like, okay, now I can bring somebody into my life. So you need to be aware of these things, right? And a lot of the times you're like, no, I'm like, I'm making minimum wage, and I want to bring a woman into my life, and I want to have kids with her. And then she's not going to feel safe next to me all the time, and I'm not going to be able to afford my kid's school. And what am I going to do? That's not. Why don't you take a couple of years, work on yourself? Going back to that, work. I realized I'm going to work on my finances, be well established in my field, my business, so when I bring somebody into my world, I can provide the safety that women, really look for in a
yeah,
man, right? And
yeah,
it's understanding those dynamics, right? Like you need to understand that a woman, the moment that a woman doesn't feel safe next to you, she's gonna look for safety somewhere else. So, but again, going back to the extremes, a lot of the times, in the masculine space, it's like, no, bro, you need to have a Bugatti. What colors your Bugatti? You need to have a Bugatti because if not, she's not going to love you. Or a guy like me is gonna go and come and take her away from you. Which I think it's just a lot of times, young men fall for these things, and then they go buy the courses or whatever, trying to like become a millionaire, and they're always in this chase of like not accepting who they are, and like, no, I can't attract the woman I wanted to have all this abundance of wealth, right?
yeah, yeah. And just something I would add to that too, because I think it's so true what you're saying is like this need to recognize like what do I need to work on, right? And really making that commitment. And what I've found for me personally, and like this is my story with my wife, and I see it with clients all the time, is like when you really make that commitment to yourself to work on those things that you need to work on, it's not even like you have to get it all perfect, because a lot of times what happens is as you're working on those things, the very energy of working on those things attracts the right person, right? So it's like it's not even about needing to be a completed project, but it's like you said,
Hmm.
it's the awareness of what do you need to work on, the willingness to do that work, and then the rest of it kind of takes care of itself, right? But what we
Yeah.
need to bring is that willingness, and that not avoiding it, not saying like, to use the example you said, like, oh, to just sit there and be like, money's not an issue. If she really loves me, she'll sleep on my air mattress in the trailer park. It's like, okay, well, maybe that's true, but wouldn't you want to have a nice place to bring her over to? Like, isn't that something you would want to provide, and really
Yeah.
not being too insecure to face up to that, right?
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
huge.
And then, it's also about seeing the potential in someone,
Hmm.
right? Like I was with women. There were certain times that I was with women that were, let's say, immature in certain aspects, but I still saw the potential. Let's say when I was younger, and I could see that they were kind, that they were an empath, and I saw the potential of the type of woman that they would become one day. Because let's say they were 19, and I was like 23, you know. So a lot of times it's the same thing. Women also seeing the potential in a man. It's like, okay, well, he's not a finished project, but I would rather, I always tell this to women, it's better to find a man who you see is a hard worker
Hmm.
than a man and sacrifices a lot than a man who has it all and gives back very little,
Yeah, I
right?
think that's so true.
And some of the, I mean, some of the hardest workers I know, they're middle class. My uncle, I mean, he's not even human. Sometimes I feel, like he's just a robot. The things that he does, he works with me in real estate and like we build houses and stuff. He's always doing a lot of the work because he knows he's a very handy person. And but he's such a hard worker that my aunt finds that so attractive in him. And it's about that thing that it's also seeing the potential in someone and again selecting the right person, choosing the hard worker over somebody who's earned everything and they're entitled, which it's what happens. I feel a lot of the times. I made a video about this the other day that a high value man can be a low value partner, right? A lot of times we talk about high value men, high value woman. Like I think the conversation should be high value partner. Like the fact that they're successful in their field or they have achieved all these accolades individually doesn't mean that they're going to be a great partner, doesn't mean that they're going to have a great connection with you, that they're going to be kind, given, right? I think those two are not mutually exclusive.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's so true. And I think, when I look at my relationship with my wife, it's like when I met her, I would have been a very easy person for her to walk away from. Like I was not established. I mean, I was establishing my life, right? I was establishing my career. I was establishing my living situation. I was in a big transition period. And I give her a lot of credit for not judging me based on my circumstances, but judging me based on my heart, right? And what did she see? Like, she didn't look at the external metrics of my life. She looked at how I showed up to life every day and how I showed up for her. And that's what she made her decision based on. And now, where I was at that point in my life is long gone, but we've created all of this together. And, if she had been tied to, oh, I need someone who, like you said, drives the Bugatti or has this success with all these accolades. Like, if she had been tied to that, she would have missed out on this. So
Yeah.
it's so true what you're saying. And I think that requires a lot of wisdom. It requires a lot of wisdom. You can't be in this cultural superficial like nightmare that most people are living in. You've got to kind of remove yourself from that and look for something deeper.
Yeah. And it's also you have to be very conscious of the stuff that you're consuming
Hmm.
because everybody's trying to affect you somehow, right?
Yeah.
Like uh, we with our content are trying to affect the people that watch your content, the videos that you consume. So if you're consuming videos every day that tell you that you're not good enough, that you need to have the Bugatti, or that, don't worry about all men cheats and lie, all of them are cheaters and liars and they want younger women, then you're gonna start seeing the world in that way. I mean, I follow, like, I'm very strict with my social media. I literally go there just mostly for work, but I follow maybe like 8 people. That's it on like content that I consume, let's say on YouTube and podcasts.
Hmm.
That's about it. I don't listen to anybody else. You know what I mean? Sometimes, when there's something in the news, and at the same time, this 8 people, because I feel that they're genuine, they're honest, they also have opposite views, right? Which is something that happens a lot of times. It's like you just want to believe these things and you only listen to people. You see this a lot in politics. If you're a Democrat, you only listen to Democrats. And whenever a Republican opens their mouth, you're like, no, that's a lie. You don't even want to hear. So I think I've reduced a lot. Something that has changed my life completely in a positive way is that I've reduced the amount of content that I consume. I only follow people that I really genuinely feel a connection with, and I try to listen to people that have opposite views. I
Yeah.
might be listening. I listen to a Democrat and a Republican. I listen to somebody who's maybe considered toxic masculine, and I listen to somebody who's considered feminist. So I try to, like, combine, have a well-rounded view of the world and the things that I consume, and at the same time minimalize it as much as possible.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I agree 100% with that, and I think it's so powerful. I want to bring it back to kind of where we started here, and maybe end on a really practical note. So going back to the idea of things men say that confuse women, and the idea of kind of this mid-grade man, right? Who he's not disinterested, but he's also not committed. He's somewhere in the middle, right? And this is, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
this is really, when we're speaking to women, this is really what women want to look out for, because the low interest man is pretty obvious, and I don't think women struggle too much with that. Don't need to worry about the high interest man. He's easy to deal with, but the kind of mid-level guy. So what are the kinds of things this guy would say or this guy would do? Like, what are the signs that women can really know, like, okay, there's not a future with this guy?
Well, the first thing I would say, one of the major things is, do you see that he wants to hear from you every day? Is he excited to see you every day? Do you see that he behaves almost, because I mean, you know this yourself, like, when a man is truly in love, we become like superheroes, right? Like, we just want to, like, go to the end of the world for this woman. Do you see that in him? Do you see that he wants to? Because we men have an innate desire to protect the things that we love, right, and care for them. So do you see that in him? But does he want to speak to you every day? Make sure that you're safe. Make sure that you're thinking about him, right? When, like, sometimes, I get a client and says, oh, but he loves me, but I haven't heard from him in 3 days. And it's like, what? Like, somebody that loves you couldn't, like, go away for 3 days without talking to you. That's, like, impossible, especially as a man. So I think communication is one thing, seeing that he really wants to hear from you every day and wants to communicate, make sure that you're safe. I think the other thing is that he would have admiration for you. He would respect your opinion, the things that you have to say, right? Like, whenever he has a problem, let's say in his life, he comes to you not only for free therapy, which a lot of people do, just dump all of their emotional turmoil on you, but he actually comes because he respects your opinion, and he also listens to you and what you're going through. Like, let's say today you tell him something that's going on in your life, something that is affecting you. Does he text you the next day following up? Like, hey, what happened with that? Did you talk to that person? And does he remember the conversations that you have with him? Right?
Mhm.
Because all these things, again, going back to protecting what you love, like, this is innate in men. And if you don't feel that he literally has the willingness to become a superhero for you, that you don't see that, like, the way he behaves towards you, like, literally the excitement to want to see you, to talk to you, if you don't see that, I mean, that's literally, showing that he has mid interest right there, And let me think if I can think of something else that they can, something very specific and practical. Um, well, also, okay, when he speaks about you to other people,
Mm.
how does he speak about you to other people? Because a lot of the times, going back to the admiration, right? Does he just mention your beauty? Oh, like, yo, yeah, she's so beautiful. Oh yeah, she's great, right? Or is he specific with the things that he admires about you? Like, oh, she's got the best sense of humor. Like every time, I mean, we're always laughing at night when she cracks a joke, you know, or like, oh, she's such an empath. Like she works at this hospital and she's always taking care of kids. She's like talking about the qualities of you as a person, and you see the admiration and respect that he has for those things, right? If he never speaks like that about you, he never puts you on a pedestal, especially your qualities, your inner qualities, not just your appearance, the external faculties that you have, then I think going back to the admiration, that's a man that really has a very high interest in you, and that is really looking up to you as like someone that he wants to, you know, share his life with and build a family, build a future together.
Yeah, yeah. I think, that respect and admiration that you're talking about is just so huge. I remember, I don't know, well, I think it was actually my wife I shared this with, and this is maybe a year into our relationship or something like that. But I just remember I said to her, like, I've never had a partner that I respected this much, and just like, and if I look at my past, it was often there was there were several relationships that were, I would say, loving, where we had a lot of love for each other and care for each other. But respect and admiration it's different than just love, right? Like love is love and love is great. And I mean, generally I love everybody for the most part, but that respect and admiration really sets a relationship apart, right? When you love someone and you respect them and you admire them and like you look up to them, you think of all the people in the world, they're one of the best, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
just it really it's a completely different level, and I'm with you on that. Like if that is not present in a relationship, you're missing something like fundamental.
Yeah,
Like,
especially for a fulfilling relationship. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And there are a lot of people who are together raising kids. They love each other, they care about each other, they're doing it all. But again, if that respect isn't there, it's like as you said, the fulfillment that's available in the relationship is just it's missing something, right?
Yeah.
It's not as complete or as full as it could be.
Yeah, and like going back to that, a lot of the respect comes from having your strong values and beliefs, having the strong boundaries where you're secure, you know who you are as a person, and you show up every day like that.
Mhm. And that person sees that and appreciates that, right? Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, I mean, we've touched on so many great things. It's been a really awesome conversation. Anything in closing that you want to add? Maybe we haven't touched on yet.
Well, um, the last thing I will say, going back to, I just thought about it, the mid interest and all these things. I think one of the most important things in any relationship, especially when you're starting to date somebody, is consistency, right? Like I think one of the most painful experiences that you have as a person, or let's say when you're going through heartbreak, when you're going through a breakup, especially if you dated somebody for 3, 6 months, and you see that they were very consistent, they were giving you all this high interest, right? And suddenly they stopped giving you that. They pulled away, and
Hmm.
you're wondering what just happened. There's something wrong with me. Did I do something wrong? Right? And it's because a lot of the times people, I think women have a hard time understanding consistent behavior with just someone who needed you at that moment in his life. Going back to the admiration, going back to somebody who likes you, really enjoys spending time with you, to somebody who admires you and respects you, right? And consistency is actually, you have to think like a heartbeat, like it's not ups and downs, it's actually like a flat line. And a lot of the times, actually, when a man is very interested in you, I feel you will see certain, he's going to be a little cautious about it. He's not going to be love bombing you at first. He's
Mm.
going to display that he likes you and all that, but you will see that he's a little cautious. So you will see that he gives a consistent, trip, right, of attention. He wants to talk to you every day. He wants to, but sometimes I think women are used to like this. Oh no, you should be giving me flowers, by the third day. Or sometimes they meet love bombers, who's like showering them with all this attention and affection at first, and they pulled away 5 months later, when their testosterone levels are down because they already, got to sleep with them and now they want a new experience with someone else. So I think being able to point consistent behavior, right? Understanding when you see a man that shows up every day, maybe in a, not in the way that you expected, maybe in a smaller way that you expected, but you see that he shows up every day. That's better than a man that shows up for a week, like takes you to Madrid, and then you go on this vacation and then he disappears for like another week because he's busy with work, and then he comes back and so I think always take consistent behavior over the ups and downs, even though the ups may feel magnificent. I think when it's consistent behavior, it can actually escalate little by little, and once you get to the peak, it feels amazing. And
Yeah,
it's you're gonna have less downs than with this man, let's say.
that is such a huge point. I always come back to in Buddhism, they have a philosophy called the middle way. And it's basically the absence of extremes, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it basically, in any area of life, you can find the correct path by taking the middle way. And our society, you've mentioned this already, but our society tends to operate on extremes, sometimes extreme positive, extreme negative. But and I think a lot of people are looking for someone to come in and kind of sweep them off their feet with this really extreme experience, like, yeah, going to Madrid or whatever, right? But like, they're looking for someone to come and sweep them off their feet. But yeah, real love, I think in most cases doesn't really show up that way. It shows up as someone who's like honest and humble and kind of, exceptional in their own way, but also average in their own way, right? They're not trying to be the thing that blows your mind. They're just trying to authentically love you. And
Yeah.
it has a different look and a different feel to it. I think it's really great that you touched on that.
Yeah, and the last thing I will say, going back to the content, women consume a lot of movies and shows, right? Like all this like Love Island and all these things. And I think that can, a lot of the times, I remember I was dating this girl who would watch Love Island, and suddenly I did something one day and she told me, oh no, Nick did the same thing and that means this and that. And I was like, who the hell is Nick? What are you talking about? So I think a lot of times, going back to that, it's like you have to be aware of the content that you're watching and how that is affecting you, because whatever you put in through your through your eyes, through your iris, is affecting your brain. And if you're watching things that are always displaying this crazy stupid love, like the movie, and all this grandiose like experiences and all these things, that you feel that life needs to reflect that. And
Yeah.
sometimes it can be in such a smaller way, that you're gonna miss out on those experiences because your expectations are just out of proportion.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's so true. And we don't even realize how, I think, seductive it is, right? And we do it for entertainment, but then it shapes our mindset and our life. And yeah, it's really, really awesome stuff. So Thank you so much. I mean, I really appreciate your time today. This has been an incredible conversation. I know the listeners are going to find amazing value in it. I just want to give you an opportunity if there's something you would like to direct people to, a place they can find you, a way they can work with you, or anything. Yeah, let people know where they can go to connect with you.
Yeah, I'm Save the Messenger on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. You can find me under that username everywhere. I do, dating advice, relationship advice, and I also speak a lot about self-improvement. I'm slowly moving into self-improvement as well because I realized, going back to that, you need to work on yourself first to be able to attract who you are, what you want. So yeah, Save the Messenger, you know, online.
Awesome, awesome. So look up Save the Messenger on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. Ishmael, it's been really great chatting with you today. Again, I appreciate your time and just, making an appearance here. And I know the listeners are going to love it. So yeah, thank you so much for being with us, sharing your wisdom and everything you've had to share. And
Thank you, Shane.
yeah,
I
thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you. My pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks again for checking out the show. Please subscribe on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on the most. And I would love it so much if you leave a review and tell people what you think of us. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram @theliving_relationship to connect more closely. And I'm grateful to be supporting you on your journey to love.